Hello and welcome to the 47 Minutes of Heaven we call the D1Baseball Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Patrick Rooney. Today's episode brought to us by our good friends at S2 Cognition. S2 Cognition delivers a revolutionary approach to helping athletes understand how in-game decisions impact their performance from youth levels all the way to the pros. Thanks again to our friends at S2 Cognition. It's about swing decisions, and we know that that's important. The folks at S2 can help you assess where you are and then do something about it. So thanks to those guys. As always, I am joined by the great Kendall J. Rogers, the great Jose Joseph J. Healy. Gentlemen, it is Thanksgiving week. It is the Tuesday before Thanksgiving. Before we get into the inane banter, how are we feeling? How are, just from a pitch count level, Coach Healy, let's start with you. 1 to 10. Are you ready to make pitches opening weekend, or where are we in our conditioning?
100% rounding into form. I came into the fall in the best shape of my life. I've really worked on my body. So feeling good about that. Feeling strong.
You look a little more swole than usual. Like your shoulders are like a beastly bulging, man. With plates.
Maybe I'm just tight. Like my shoulders are lifted up.
Grab. If Coach Healy's known for anything, it's his vocab and his trapezoids.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, it's the anxiety traps. It's not even like
that was part of the
anxiety.
When we hired him, that's part of the process. Is okay. I need your 15 reps on a bench press. What can you get to? If you can get over 150, you're good.
Vocab.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. But no, I'm feeling good. Runes. Thanksgiving week coming at us hot and heavy. Doing a little something different this week for Thanksgiving. So I'm hitting the road and so
where are you going?
Different. Got some family in town that used to live in Virginia Beach for a while. And so we're going to Virginia Beach for a few days. They've got a Christmas light display out there on the beach. Apparently it's pretty cool. And they've got 2 little kiddos. So they're going to enjoy that. And
fun.
We're doing Thanksgiving meal at a restaurant. Found a place that's doing like a prefix menu. So no cooking for the family this year, at least in this part of the family.
Love that. Kendall, where do you stand 1 to 10? Like opening weekend is February 18th. February 16th is opening night. Like scale of 1 to 10, where are we right now in our preparation?
I feel like I'm at like a 6.5 to 7. It's really interesting. I had a weird fall in the sense that like I kind of backloaded everything, whereas guys like Aaron and Joe like were on the road all the time. I kind of just went everywhere at the very end of the fall. So it's kind of interesting. I think at the end of the fall, you kind of find out like which guys, are banged up, which guys are able to go through the whole fall and still have pretty crisp stuff. Out of all the teams I saw, I really liked, A&M, LSU, TCU for me. Honestly, guys, was a little bit surprising. Like I think we all thought they'd be pretty good this year, but that looks like a team that can very much be a national championship type of club, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But in terms of preparation, I feel like I'm in a pretty good spot. Wake is the other team for me that I'm fascinated to kind of see in the spring. I mean, that was a club that, obviously lost some pieces, but they did a really nice job in the portal. And guys, 3 years ago, Aaron wouldn't believe I would say this, but they might be my national championship pick.
And they got the Moose. The Moose is loose. So hold that thought, Kendall. Let's not go too far down the road. I have an inane banter topic. I mean, I know people come here for the college baseball, but in some ways, the inane banter part of the podcast is brought to us by our good friends at Pitch Logic. This is a system used by players, coaches, scouts, and instructors at all levels of play, from youth leagues to the big leagues. Easy to use and affordable technology makes the platform accessible to every player at every level. All the metrics and features that are used at the highest level of our sport. See pitchlogic.com for more information. Pitchlogic.com for more information. So thanks to those guys. All right, so here's what I got for you boys for inane banter. This morning, Coach Rooney taking the Accord in to get an oil change. While doing that, I'm in the waiting room and I'm reading Coach Healy's Florida Fall Report. And I start thinking about, okay, when I'm writing fall reports, what's the thing that drives me crazy about myself as an author? And here's what it is. I want to use the verb is for every sentence. Like it's just every sentence, I have to force myself off the word is. So that kind of got my mind racing. Here's where it took me, a completely random place. I'm blaming my college education on the fact that I struggle to write these things because I was an accounting major. And so that's my excuse. It's a poor one. That said, here's my inane banter question. I got me thinking, what was my favorite college class? What was your Coach Healy? I'll start with you. What was your favorite class that you took at old Sam Houston State University? Sam, if you will, could be for any reason.
Oh, let's see. Okay, so two come to mind. One in a more serious sense. One was kind of ridiculous. So the ridiculous one was freshman year. I took a history of rock and roll in popular music class.
Nice.
Shout out to Dr. Dave Englert.
Dr. Dave.
Yeah, they held the class in this old chapel. Like, it was kind of a weird place to take the class, but I believe that chapel got knocked down. Yeah, everything at Sam Houston has been knocked down and rebuilt in the last decade. But so it was just like your classic, like exactly what you want as a freshman. The class is at like 11 a.m. So I didn't have to get out of bed early for it. Basically, all we did was sit in this chapel, and like he would play like 90-second clips of a bunch of different old rock songs, and then we'd talk about it, and then that was it. Like that's kind of what it was. So
love it.
That was great. On a more serious sense, as I became more of a nerd as I went through my college years, I took a Western European politics class. I was a political science major, and I took a Western European politics class with a professor who, a late professor, no longer with us, but a great professor in that class, who was just really good about making it clear like how different the world is and different, right? I mean, like politics don't operate the same way here they do everywhere else in the world. And he was really good about making that simple and easy to digest and helping to understand that like there's a lot of ways to skin this cat, politically speaking. And so it was just a really well taught class, and I'm a nerd, so I enjoyed that stuff.
Oh man. Any country stand out from that class, Joe?
Yeah, the Netherlands was weird. They have what they call party lists, which is essentially, I don't want to butcher it too much. It's been a long time since I took the class, but they elect based on kind of a party list, so that the party basically has a slate of people that basically, as you're electing their government, these are the people who are involved. So you kind of know, for lack of a better way of putting it, and this is not an exact, so political science wonks, please do not come for me on Twitter. But the long story short is it would be kind of like, actually, you know what, do come at me on Twitter, because I'd love to know the Venn diagram.
Vol Twitter's licking their chops right now.
Seriously,
I'd love to know the Venn diagram of people who listen to this who also are political science wonks. So maybe do reach out to me on Twitter. But basically, it would kind of be like if whoever's running for president told you ahead of time who their cabinet secretaries were going to be, and like what all that stuff was going to involve. So you have more information as a voter, but it also does kind of put you more into a box of like, well, what if I like 80% of these people, but not 20% of them? But you got to take them all. That's just what it is. So
interesting.
That one stuck out to me as being interesting.
Gosh, Joe, you had those are good answers. Kendall, what do you got? I'm feeling backed into a corner here.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I don't know about a good story like that. There was a class I took, strangely enough, business management and business law. I had a professor named Keith Swim who was really difficult. You had to study a lot to do well on his tests, and he was kind of an ass, but like he was a really good professor, and like people loved him. It was weird, like he was an ass, but like we all really liked him. So it was a very strange deal. He's like ultra famous at A&M in the business school. That class was fascinating just to kind of learn business law. But I think the coolest class I took was a sports facility class, like a sport, like the business of sport facilities class as part of my major. And basically the whole class was this, diving into different like sports projects around the world and around the US, and basically just showing us how much BS, like all these public ballparks that are built, like how just ridiculous these economic impact studies are for these cities. It was a really interesting class to kind of, look at these projects, and it was very illuminating in the sense that a lot of the community gets screwed by some of these ballparks and stadiums that are built, and not all of them, but in a lot of cities, it's a racket, man.
Oh man, that's a class I would take as an adult. It was
really interesting. It was really interesting because it's like, I think it was I can't remember the city now. It might have been when was it when they redid they redid Shea, or they built a new ballpark after I was in college. So I can't remember exactly what ballpark it was, but it was one of the bigger organizations. When they built their ballpark, like basically the entire economic study was a lie, and like it came out that it was a lie, and like people were like, oh, never mind, like who cares? And so it was interesting to say the least.
Lies and deceit. All right, so the class I'm going to mention is not a class I would take as an adult. So at Notre Dame, I was very overmatched as an accounting major. Got my butt kicked, and so my strategy was, when you took electives, you could take them pass fail at Notre Dame if you were a junior and a senior. So, and I was very much into baseball, and I was very much into my social life. Like those were my priorities. When people say that there's three things in college if you're an athlete: your sport, your academics, and your social life, and you can be good at two of the three. I made a very clear choice that I was going to be good socially. That was very important to Coach Rooney. And so, and I feel like I nailed that. And so for my electives, I created a yellow folder, and I pulled every upperclassman I could talk to and say, give me the easiest electives you've either taken or heard of at Notre Dame. And I put them in the yellow folder. I want you to know, Coach Healy, I handed that down to younger baseball players at Notre Dame. That was my gift to posterity. One of the classes I took that I found and took as an elective was engineering ethics. Mind you, I was an accounting major, so there was a little loophole that I snuck into that class. Me with a bunch of engineers and one other buddy who was not an engineer. That went fine. We passed it. The class I want to mention that I'll never forget, Portraits of Heroic Women, was a class that Coach Rooney took as an elective. It was genius because it was me and Vince Gentili. He was on the soccer team. Notre Dame at the time was not a place where girls were easy to meet. There were way more guys than girls. Most of the guys there are like student body president, played 17 sports in high school, act way more together than Coach Rooney. So this was just stumbled into a stroke of genius here. So Portraits of Heroic Women. I can't find the professor name, but he is a legend, and I will get that for you for future podcasts. Go ahead.
So which woman came out as heroic that you were unexpected?
Don't remember any of the class. I barely attended it. It was pass fail. This was back when one of the loopholes at Notre Dame when I was there, KR, is the professors had to fight these students off about everybody wanted an A. And someone like Coach Rooney that was really like more interested in the BC range, it was almost like an unspoken agreement. Like, hey, if you don't torment me, I won't torment you. It was before they were taking attendance formally. So I was not, I was a junior. I just turned 21. I did not do a great job attending that class. If we're calling official,
is J-Ro a Notre Dame girl?
No, she went to Colorado, but it does jive. So J-Ro, the great Jennifer Rooney, has an accounting degree also. I worked in accounting for 10 working days. She actually had a career in accounting. I literally know nothing about accounting. And it drives J-Ro bonkers that I have an accounting degree from Notre Dame and I literally know nothing. It's embarrassing.
You can just say, when you mess up on the budget, you can just say, hey, man, I know nothing about accounting.
Yeah, accounting.
Sorry.
Yeah.
That pass-fail system kind of appeals to me from the standpoint of I had one class that I would have mentioned had I thought of this when you first asked me, Runes. I had one class. I changed majors in college, and my first major, I was taking a class that at this point I knew I was changing majors, and the class was really project heavy. So it was just like a lot of time investment into something I wasn't going to major in anymore. And I remember the professor saying on the first day of class, I believe that, shout out to Mel Straight. That's the professor here at Sam Houston.
Mel.
I used to do a good impression of him. I've lost it. But he said, I believe any student who shows up to class every single day, regardless of what else they do, deserves at least a C. And wouldn't you know it, that was true, because I didn't turn anything in. I showed up every single day and got a C. And so I'd like to think, I don't know that anybody else had ever tested that theory. I didn't ask him. I should have.
You played chicken with Professor Mel, Joe.
I did. We stared each other down. We really stared each other down on that one.
Love that.
I got my C. Look, I'm not necessarily proud of that in hindsight. But look, I mean, that was where I was at. So
I really wish that senior level finance was pass-fail. That'd have been really great.
That sounds like that's like some of these classes I hear some of these kids taking. I'm like, man, why do you want to hate your college experience? What do you organic chemistry? Why would you do that to yourself? But
And you have
hey,
people like Von Miller who went to A&M as an ag development major and now like owns chicken farms.
Incredible.
Like he makes millions of dollars a year on chicken farms.
That's amazing. God bless these people that are way smarter than Coach Rooney. Boys, let's get to the college baseball. Let's get to a lighter topic. So here's what I thought we could do. It is almost December, and we're all starting to wrap our arms around, like, what is this 2024 season going to look like? I mentioned opening night is going to be February 16th. That will be here before we know it. So what I wanted to do is we're going to go through the top 10 RPI conferences from last year. We're going to talk about, hey, is there any changing dynamic in the conference? Because this is a year where there's going to be some movement. Teams are, conference realignment is getting very real. And 2024 is a season where it's going to be real. So we'll talk through that. So the concept is I'll announce the conference who won it last year. And let's just first flinch coming out of the fall. We haven't done any research. We haven't any questionnaires have come back. So what I want to do, we'll go around the horn. First flinch, who do we think is going to win the league? So let's start with the SEC. No changes from a realignment standpoint. Texas and Oklahoma are not coming in yet. Last year, Florida and Arkansas tied for the regular season championship. And that's what we're talking about, regular season, by the way. I'm happy to go. Well, no, Joe, you're our SEC guy. You got to go first. You wear it. Who do you think's winning the SEC this year?
Well, and for those who also listen to Highway to Hoover, read the stuff at SEC Extra. As Rune said, this is preliminary.
Not binding. This is a not binding comment.
Yes, not legally binding whatsoever. So I think there's a couple of ways to go. So I'll give a real answer, but just so people get my thought process here.
Such a politician.
I've been open about being pretty in on Vanderbilt. Like I really like the arms, and I understand the concerns about the offense. I get it. I share some of them. However, I like those individual pieces enough that I think they'll do enough, right? How could you not look at LSU and think that there could be some special things happening there? They're really stacked on the mound, at least on paper. I kind of like Florida, though. And I just got back from seeing Florida, so maybe that's coloring a little of what I'm looking at here. But look, I mean, it's absurd to think about, but they might have the best pitcher and the best hitter in the country, right? I mean, Caglianone's been working hard this offseason with David Kopp, the pitching guy at Florida, and on changing some things with his arm slot to throw more strikes. I have heard it was a little bit hit and miss to begin the fall, but things are trending in the right direction. The stuff is certainly elite of the elite. So that's a great starting point. Liam Peterson as a freshman looks like he's going to be a rotation guy. Cade Fisher, potential rotation guy. I think we all assumed Brandon Neely was probably going to move to the rotation, but now it's like, you're not going to use him on Tuesday. So does he go back to the bullpen? And if so, he's a really good bullpen piece there. And I think they're going to be physical offensively. There's no Wyatt Langford there because that's a high bar to clear, but Colby Shelton, obviously really good player. Brody Donay, as much raw power as Jack Caglione. That's raw power, not in-game power necessarily. So I really like this Florida club, but I think it's going to be another year in the SEC where we've got, 3 or 4 teams sitting at 19-11 or 20-10 in the league. And because I didn't even mention Arkansas, and at this point it feels disrespectful not to even give them a cursory mention as a team in this mix, because that's just kind of the standard they've set. So this to me, I feel like is probably the toughest league to handicap at this point. I don't necessarily see a runaway favorite.
Yep. Kendall, what say you? This is a tough one.
Yeah, I mean, Joe kind of stole my thunder. I think Florida too. I was just kind of reading that fall report this morning. I think, watching LSU over the weekend, I feel really good about the pitching staff. They're going to be deeper. It's kind of interesting. They don't have Paul Skeens, but they're going to be way deeper in terms of like just quality arms. Aiden Moffitt, who didn't even pitch last year for him, was 96, 97 with electric stuff. They obviously added some nice pieces overall. Positionally, they're not going to be quite as good, which, I mean, they lost some absolute superstars. So that's to be expected, but it's going to be a little bit different team. It's going to be a way different team. So LSU, to me, is a little tougher to handicap than Florida, just because I think when you look at Florida, and Joe touched on this, is I like the balance that they present. If you look at Florida overall, he mentioned Brandon Neely, Cade Fisher, Jack Kaggs, they've got those guys, and then the newcomers, and then offensively. I mean, if you look at that lineup top to bottom, it's very much balanced, especially when you had Colby Shelton. You lose Wyatt Langford, but Shelton kind of adds the power back to that lineup that you're losing in Langford to a degree. Then getting Jack back, and Luke Heyman was obviously excellent last year. And then you look at some of those older pieces. So I just like Florida's balance. I mean, Vanderbilt definitely has a more high-end pitching staff than Florida. But I'm with Joe on this one as well. I did not get great reports on Vanderbilt's offense. And then I would also say, keep an eye on Tennessee a little bit. I really like what I read about Tennessee throughout the fall. They obviously, are supremely talented. And then the sleeper, if I was going to have to pick a sleeper in that league, not that we're just totally breaking down the SEC, but I might have like A&M as my sleeper. I really, really liked what I saw from them in a one day scrimmage. We'll see what happens come spring. But, remember the name Gavin Grahovic, the talented freshman. He's Josh Young 2.0. If he plays in the spring the way he did when I saw him in the fall, that is Jace Lavalette all over again. And if that happens, they should have a really good team. So, and then Arkansas. I mean, Joe mentioned Arkansas, but, the Hogs, again, really, really deep on the mound. The offense for me is a question mark, which I feel like Arkansas typically, guys, is, a pretty well-established offensive club, whereas this one I think has something to prove a little bit.
A lot of tough choices there. Yeah, when you were speaking on A&M there, Kendall, and this will be for future research, but I can already see I've got a blind spot for A&M. Like, I saw them pitch poorly last year, and so it's hard for me to see them pitching well this year, which is just a very flawed line of thinking by me. And so, I'm excited to dive into them in the preseason.
Yeah, it's fair.
Challenge that.
Yeah, I mean, they'll get the Prager kid back from injury. They had a freshman named Isaac Morton who's up to 98. The night I saw him, he could very well be a rotation piece. And I think the biggest X factor for them is Chris Cortez. He was a guy that, had an opportunity to get in the portal, maybe join Nate Yeskie at LSU, decided to stay at A&M, and he showed much, much better command this fall. That's the big thing with him. If Chris Cortez can command his stuff, I mean,
big arm.
There may not be one or two better arms than him in the SEC this year, and that's the big X factor for them. If he clicks, that team's gonna be really good.
Yep, I'm gonna pick Vandy I mean, I think any of those choices you're kind of throwing a dart, to your point, Joe. I just, Vandy's got the pitching you guys mentioned. They do have an experienced position player group. Now those guys will have to make a jump, but boy, that's going to be a fun race. Let's go to the ACC. Second RPI league. Wake won it last year. No changes for this year. Cal and Stanford don't come in until the following year. I'll go first. I would pick Wake again. I don't know how you don't.
Yeah, there's not a lot to say. I mean, Wake is one of the few fall reports I read that I loved everything about him.
Yeah,
like I read through it and it was like nothing I looked at and went, oh, you know what? That's a question mark for me. So yeah, for me it'd be Wake. I'm trying to think of the rest of that league, but Louisville,
Clemson and Virginia feel like tier 2.
Virginia. I mean, to me, the most interesting team, and I know we're talking about favorites. The most interesting team to me is Louisville because I feel like it's like a broken record at this point. Like you read through their fall report or you watch them and you're like, oh, I like the offense, but boy, the pitching staff, leaves a lot to be desired. I think the biggest thing for them, we talked about the X factor with Cortez at A&M is, Sebastian Gagora, the Wright State transfer. He threw with a lot more velocity this fall. I can't remember if it was Joe or Aaron that saw him, but instead of like 87, 89, it was more like 91 and 93. If he can do that in the spring, that could be the X factor for Louisville to potentially be kind of a sleeper in that league.
Isn't that crazy with Louisville, guys? They've never they are entering a season where they've missed the NCAA tournament 2 out of the last 3 seasons. That has never occurred in the Dan McDonnell era. It's just a weird time for that program. But I again, like betting against them feels like a very
cool choice. And the other thing that's really unique about U of L too, and you could, let's just say this. You could say this is a little bit of an indictment on Louisville's just overall approach in the transfer portal. But the thing that's interesting to me about Louisville is, they went out and got, 3 or 4 really, really talented D2, D3 guys. And it's going to be so fascinating to me to see how guys that were superstars at lower levels, how they make that transition to the ACC this year. And Duke's dealing with kind of the same thing a little bit with a couple of their position guys they brought in. Speaking of really impressive clubs, their pitching staff's going to be loaded at Duke.
Yep. Joe, what say you on the ACC?
Yeah, I'll be quick because I think Wake is the obvious answer here. I did the Wake fall report, so I've gotten a closer look at them, but I also, I've also done Clemson and Louisville, so I've got a decent feel in the ACC, and I perceive that Wake is getting further away from the rest of the ACC, not the other way around.
Yeah.
But I will throw a little mention in here for Clemson. I like the way they're heading. They kind of got into a place as a program where they were very offensive clubs that weren't very athletic and didn't really play defense very well. And that's changing around. I really like the athleticism on the team. I really liked the team speed. They felt a little light on the mound, but I like that they can build from the back to the front. They returned something like 7 of their top 8 relievers from last year. Mm-hmm. And so that might not be pretty the way they do the pitching in Clemson in 2024, but it might be effective, especially in an ACC where, this, Runes, I'm sure you've called a number of ACC games like this where sometimes those Sunday games are just kind of ugly in the ACC, and you have to win a game when you put 7 dudes on the mound. And I think Clemson's built to do that. And so again, might not be pretty, but I think it could be effective. And Cam Cannarella might be the most dynamic player in college baseball, non Jack Caglione division, just because center field, real speed, real hit, it's just a really dynamic package.
I'll say this, guys, about the ACC. I think Wake is on the verge, and granted, Vanderbilt hasn't just totally dominated the SEC, but I think Wake is on the verge of being Vandy 2.0, kind of the Vandy of the ACC, because they started to get cachet on the national stage. They're recruiting at a higher level. They've put money, obviously, in a lot of their facilities. They're starting to get fan support, which, again, they're not going to ever sell out 8,000 people. Number one, their stadium doesn't hold that, but they would never sell that out. So, like Vanderbilt, they can get 2,000 for a weekend, every game on the weekend, just like Vandy. And the other thing that's kind of the X factor for Wake is, from what I understand, they're starting to kind of figure out their NIL. And if you talk about Wake, it's in a great, Wake Forest is in a great state. It's an elite academic school. It's in a great conference. And what's not to like about that whole setup? So Wake is on the verge. One more good. If they kind of meet expectations this year, I think this is a program that, granted, you could say they've already taken off, but I think a second year like this, I think you start to look at it as, hey, these guys are about to be really, really good every year.
Yeah, I think they're clicking on all cylinders. I just would say the one thing is they've got to keep Corey Mascara. He feels like he's like that kind of thing that helped them make that next jump. Because you're right, they're. Right now, Wake Forest is trading punches with anybody. It doesn't matter. SEC, SEC East, SEC West. Wake is in those recruiting battles. They can play with anybody.
Yeah, but I would say this too, to give Wake a little credit, other than Corey. We love Corey, but 3 years ago, Corey Mascara wasn't the name that he is now. And who's to say that if Moose gets a head job, he almost took the Penn State job. Who's to say that somebody doesn't, that Tom Walter, his pitch isn't, hey, number one, we'll pay you handsomely. Number two, we have a lot of momentum. And by the way, number 3, you can be the next Corey Mascara, the next assistant of the year in college baseball.
It's an attractive job.
I think they have they have a good thing to sell at this point.
No question. I think, because it is easy for my comment to come off as kind of like a critique or dinging Wake Forest. It's not meant that way at all. You're right, Kendall. That's going to be, if Moose leaves, they will have a long list of options for pitching coach. I just think he's in a real
and Bill Salento's a really good coach too.
Yeah, no question.
Everybody around that program holds him in pretty high esteem.
Yeah, they got it going on right there. That's just all there is to it. Let's do the Big 12. Last year was a 3-way tie. You had Oklahoma State, West Virginia, and Texas. Man, that was West Virginia's leg to win, and they just kind of slipped up at the end. So this is a different Big 12 this year. Cincinnati, Houston, BYU, and Central Florida come in. The Pac-12 schools come in the following year. So this is, you got +4 in the Big 12. Kendall, that's your neck of the nape. What say you on the Big 12?
Yeah, it's hard for me not to go with TCU. I mean, I saw Texas and TCU. I thought TCU for me was clearly the better team. I think Texas, granted, Tanner Witt can get back to normal form, which he was shut down a little early this fall because frankly, it sounds like the stuff was not great. If that doesn't happen, I think Texas could be in a little trouble. And when I mean trouble, I'm saying they're not hosting a regional. So I just think when you look at TCU overall, the biggest thing in college baseball that I'll look for in a team is kind of what is their catching situation. And if you look at TCU, with Carson Bowen, a freshman All-American, and, getting Curtis Byrne back for yet another year, I mean, you could argue that there's not a better catching situation in college baseball between those two guys. Because if, Bowen's hurt, then you go with a guy who's a fifth-year senior as your replacement for him. So I really like how they stack up from a pitching or from a catching standpoint. Obviously, I love Anthony Silva up the middle. Luke Boyers is back for another year. I think when you look at the rotation, Cole Klecker ended up being a really good Friday guy for them last year. Ben Abelt, the talented lefty reliever, is going to move in the weekend rotation. Louis Rodriguez is back, and they've got some really nice young pieces too. I just really liked TCU's pop. They had a freshman by the name of Sam Myers, who's really impressive the night I was there. Brody Green is a breakout candidate for them. Offensively, had a home run and a triple, or I think it was a double or triple the other night in Fort Worth. And so, again, we talked about Florida being balanced. I think this TCU team has a chance to be very balanced as well. Offensively, I think the rotation is going to be good. The only question mark for them is probably at the back end, because if they move Ben Abelt to the front end of the rotation with Klecker, then you've got to figure out who's going to be the closer. I think Los is hoping that Cademan Parker can kind of be that guy. He's been up to 95, 96 this fall. There was a chilly night I was there. He was 92, 95. So if he can kind of settle into a reliever role with maybe one of those younger arms, this could be a very, very good team.
Joseph, what say you?
Yeah, I guess I'll go with Kendall, having seen him up close, I'll go TCU as well. I mean, I like the big picture stuff that's happening with TCU, such as they're a team that really seemed to be big game hunting in the portal in a way that a lot of these other Big 12 teams, frankly, just have not, right? I mean, Oklahoma State's had some nice pieces. Griffin Dorshing, obviously, remember that guy. But the Big 12 has not been the conference that has really been big game hunting quite as much in the portal. So I like that about TCU. So I just kind of like the big picture stuff with them. I didn't realize Curtis Byrne still had eligibility, so shout out to Curtis Byrne.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he was at TCU when I was in school at A&M.
He'll be taking portraits of heroic women this year.
By the way, I can't believe I forgot to mention him, but I was just looking through my notes. Obviously, Peyton Tolley looked really good for them this fall. Luke, I talked about 2.0 with Wake Forest and Vandy. He is like Luke and Baker 2.0. He absolutely crushed a home run the night I was there. So, you throw him in the middle of that lineup too. Yeah, I'll let the cut of their jib.
Yeah, shout out to CBC High School in St. Louis, Missouri, Curtis Burns High School. Nice. Two other big picture things in the Big 12 that I think are interesting, since we kind of have zeroed in on TCU here. The fact that I don't think we're probably going to mention Texas Tech in this conversation is a departure from where things were, say, 3 to 5 years ago. And then also, we've talked about them a little bit on this podcast, but it might, if you're looking for a team that could make a move, I think Kansas State is the one to look at. I mean, the high end talent for the Wildcats is as good as, I'm talking the top, handful of players on the roster are as good as anybody else in the Big 12. It's just going to be about how well do their depth pieces play relative to everyone else.
Yeah, fair. I'm with you guys. Like, TCU seems like the team with the program with the most momentum right now. This league's going to be fascinating because 4 new teams this year. Next year, OU and Texas leave. That's when Arizona State and Utah and Arizona come in. It's going to be, this league's going to be really fun to follow. Let's go to the Pac-12. Stanford won it all. This is the last year of the Pac-12, the last year of Pac-12 baseball. This is a league with almost 30 national championships in our sport of college baseball. I'll go first. Oregon State, I wrote up. I love this team. Totally smitten with them. I think it's the best team on the West Coast. You've got a Player of the Year candidate in Travis Bazzana. I was worried last year. The criticism of Oregon State was they don't miss enough bats in the rotation, and they still have that issue to a degree. But those kids like Jacob Kamatz and Jaron Hunter are all AJ Lattery. They're all older and have started a million college games. but man, there's just this influx of velocity in the freshman and sophomore classes. And I think that's a nice blend. I like that. And they're just like, everybody's back. I don't know. I love Oregon State. It feels like Oregon State feels a little bit like Pac-12 feels a little bit like the ACC, where you've got tier 1 as one team, and then you've got another tier. Go ahead, KR. What do you got on the Pac?
Yeah, I'm with the Beavs too. I've obviously done a couple of the Pac-12 fall reports. I did the UW. They're going to have a really, really talented lineup. I think they have a lot to be desired on the mound. They lost a lot of key pieces from last year, including Kiefer Lord. They do to get Colton McIntosh back. I think, JK basically told me, like, he's essentially the key to our season. He's like, not to throw like one, put one dude on a pedestal, but like, he's up to 96, 97. He's a shutdown guy at the back end. If they can get him back and get him to be a stud closer, it gives them a lot of flexibility on the mound. If not, they could be in a little bit of trouble depth wise. And so, Washington, I think, is interesting. I think Stanford at this point, even without Braden Montgomery and some obvious pieces, like Esky, like always has those guys in the hunt. So I can't discount Stanford. I mean, they'll be in the hunt to some degree, but I'm with you on Oregon State. They especially offensively, that I really like the look of this club.
Yep. Joe?
What in the name of Danny Putnam and Carlos Quentin is going on here? You guys, this is wildly disrespectful to Stanford.
Yeah.
I mean,
what in the name of Kyle Peterson is going on here?
Yeah.
Kyle Peterson is turning over in his grave right now because we're not being respectful enough to Stanford. I mean, jokes aside, I understand the Oregon State positivity, but we've had questions about Stanford teams coming into seasons before. I mean, so I just don't see this as necessarily being any different. And what they've done the last 3 years, look, it hasn't gone in Omaha the way they would have wanted it to go, right? And Dave Esker, to his credit, was very candid about that last year when they got eliminated, about just like, we got to figure out a way to win some games here. But so I just think they've got something rolling there that I like. You would prefer to have Braden Montgomery, sure, but I don't know. Like they seem to figure out their issues every year. We seem to come in with questions about are they going to pitch enough, and how are they going to replace this guy or that guy, and they just figure it out. And so I'm going to bet on that happening again.
Yep, it's fair. I heard Esky interviewed somewhere recently, and he just mentioned how their junior and senior classes are way lighter in numbers than was normal for them, but they do really like their freshmen and sophomores. And so, yeah, Stanford's an interesting wild card. There's a lot of wild cards in that league. I love Arizona State's lineup. They're going to throw like 6 freshmen are key arms for them. I mean, every team is unique in that regard. Hey, let's keep whipping around, boys, because we'll run out of time. The Fun Belt was the number 5 RPI conference last year. Coastal won it. I'll go first. Troy. Like I read, I think Fitzy wrote the fall report on Troy, and man, I don't know what there's Shane Lewis. I mean, that's I haven't read all the Sun Belt fall reports yet, but that's the one that jumped out at me. Kendall, what say you on the Fun Belt?
Yeah, Troy jumped out at me. I think Southern Miss is another one of those programs, even with Oz, leading the charge there. I think they're always going to be in the discussion. Louisiana, it sounds like they might not be quite as deep offensively as they typically are, without Heath Hood and Julian Brock and Carson Rocafort and guys like that. But it sounds like they do have really good frontline pitching. So keep an eye on those guys. And Texas State, I did their fall report last week, and, I really like what they have with Davis Powell at shortstop. I think you made the comment. I think it was you or Aaron. I can't remember who it was over the weekend. Made the comment that it seems like Texas State always has a really good shortstop. I thought that was a really good observation because, before that they had Dalton Sheffield. They're always good up the middle, and so that's obviously a big key to your success. They're deep behind the plate. I think Trout told me they have 3 or 4 options back there. And then, Coastal will be in the mix. And so I think overall, when I look at this league, this is going to be a fun conference moving forward. I think there's a lot of depth. I think they've firmly established themselves as a top 4 RPI conference. And so there's going to be some battles in this league, guys.
Yep. No changes in the Sun Belt this year, by the way. All the realignment is done for now. Go ahead, Joe.
What in the name of Tommy LaStella is going on here? My Coastal fall report is still forthcoming, but I'm writing that one. And I think I'll go Coastal. I mean, they returned, I believe, I don't have it here in front of me, but I believe they returned 7 position player starters from last year. plus Sebastian Alexander, who was going into last year as a starter, but missed the entire year. They lost some pieces on the mound. That's going to be the question. Teddy Sharkey is gone. They lost Liam Doyle to the transfer portal to Ole Miss. But they're going to hit enough. I'm not sure that's going to be that big of a concern. And what I would say is secondarily, I liked some of what they brought in. I think pick to click there is Alexander Meckley, a junior college transfer who looked really good in their fall game against Clemson, has big stuff. I think he's kind of a guy that is, if you know, I feel like he's probably going to be in that rotation somewhere moving forward. So I look, and the thing about it is I talked to Gary Gilmore at this time last year, and he had no idea what to expect from last year's club, and feels like they maybe arrived a year or two even early. So maybe that's just a harbinger of things to come for them. So I'll go with the Shants.
And keeping Bodine and Bender, you know, like I had heard whispers that, hey, are those kids going to leave in the portal? And they didn't. And they just both dominated the Cape, if memory serves. So, hey, in the interest of time, boys, I'm going to assign a couple conferences to you. We'll just go one person answers here. Kendall, I'm going to assign you Conference USA, but let me get context for you. So this is a league with a lot of changes. Jacksonville State, Liberty, New Mexico State, and Sam Houston are coming in. So New Mexico State and Sam Houston are leaving the WAC, and they're in Conference USA this year. If I say any of this wrong, you guys please correct me. Jacksonville State and Liberty are leaving the ASUN, and they are in Conference USA this year. The league has lost Charlotte, Rice, FAU, and UAB. They've lost Charlotte, Rice, FAU, and UAB to the American. So, Kendall, last year, DBU kind of ran away from the league at the end, UTSA, and then we're kind of a 1-2 punch, and then DBU just kind of dusted everybody. What do you say about Conference USA coming into 2024?
Yeah, I'll go with DBU again. It sounds like they're once again just a deep club with a lot of front-end talent on the mound. So, especially against that collection of teams, I definitely go DBU.
Yeah, they're hard to bet against. Joseph, give me the Big Ten. Last year, no changes this year. Maryland won it last year. Obviously, there's a coaching change. Matt Swope takes over. Rob Vaughn to Alabama. What say you on the Big Ten, Joe?
Iowa, if you're going to do it, you got to do it this year, it feels like.
Ooh.
I mean, but the talent on the mound is just, I don't mean this disrespectfully, because I think the listeners understand that I do have, having lived in that region, I have respect for the Big Ten baseball, especially the top of the league. But that's a collection of arms that you just don't see in that league, right? I mean, there have been teams that have dabbled in that through the years, right? Indiana had some teams that were right there. Michigan, obviously, 2019, we remember that rotation. But in terms of the stuff, in terms of the pedigree of those guys, this is something different. And if we use what I call the Rick Heller rule of they're always 25% better than you think they're going to be, then this team's in really good shape. So, you know, the Big Ten is wonky because not everyone plays everyone in the schedule. It's a smaller number of conference games, so things can get weird depending on how the schedule shakes out. But this, I hate to even say it because it seems like they're a little bit snake bitten as a program at times. But this feels like an Iowa year, or at least it should be.
Yep. I love it. I feel like the only team that can threaten them is Indiana at this point, but that, I don't know. The Big Ten can be hard to parse out, but I agree with everything you said. I didn't know there was a Rick Heller rule, Joe, but I love it. Thank you for that.
I do feel like there's the one thing about Iowa, I would say, like, I feel like there's a lot of pressure on them because I think Joe is right. Like, your window of opportunity is this year. Like, if you're not going to get to Omaha with Morgan, Brecht, and Langenberg, like, when are you going to get to Omaha?
Yeah, and the son of the big leaguer, Obermiller, right? Like, is like a weird slot lefty up to 97. Yeah, like you're right. They're loaded. Although they do have a new, like, if you're listening to this and you haven't seen Iowa's new baseball stadium renderings, those are awesome. Those are really, really fun.
Yeah.
So big plans to do something with that facility. Kendall, let me I'll take the Colonial. By the way, the Colonial was the 7th ranked RPI conference last year. Good on the Colonial. That's a good baseball league. They're adding Campbell this year. So the question is, can Campbell come in as a rookie and win the league from the Big South? And I will say yes. I'm not super convicted on that, but Campbell just sounds awesome. They're used to winning. Obviously, this is no offense to the Big South, but this is a big step up in class from the depth of the league. And but I think Campbell can do it. My perception is that they are so good that they can, again, I'm disrespecting UNCW. I don't mean to do that, but give me the Camels on that. Roll humps. Kendall, can you Can you do the American for us?
Who are the teams leaving?
Great question. So East Carolina won it last year. UCF, Cincinnati, and Houston, dunzo. They're gone. Big 12. UCF, UC, UH out. In FAU, Charlotte, UAB, and Rice. FAU, Charlotte, UAB, and Rice are in the American this year.
My initial thought is RIP ECU's RPI.
Ooh.
With those changes. I'll go with ECU. I just feel like, again, this is one of those programs that with CG in charge is just like wash, rinse, repeat. I feel like they're like the same team every year. There's some years where they're a little bit better on the mound than usual. But, I mean, every year they're going to hit. And then every year they're going to have just enough pitching to make some noise in a regional and potentially get to a super. It's kind of who they are.
Yeah, I can't. How can you bet against ECU right now? Like, they're just rolling. Joe, so ECU has this new Conference USA flavor. Like, they added a new seasoning to a very traditional dish. Like, you have Conference USA roots, do you not? Like, do you claim Conference USA as part of your lineage?
Yeah, I suppose so. When I was getting into college baseball, Rice was leaving the WAC and they were moving into CUSA with the University of Houston. So yeah, I mean, those games were a big part of my upbringing in college baseball. But you're right. I mean, that's to Kendall's point. I guess you could make an argument that, well, being CUSA 2.0 is not necessarily a bad thing because that was a version of CUSA that was pretty doggone good. But I just don't. At this point, I don't know what you're getting, and it's kind of amazing that of those teams moving in, that Rice is the most depressed asset right now. That would have been unbelievable as recently as even 5 years ago. So, but yeah, it's just a tough place to be.
Yeah, it's nuts. It is totally nuts. So let me just recap this. So the changes, if you're trying to get your arms around conference realignment, Big 12 is going to add those 4 teams. Campbell's going to the Colonial. Conference USA's got teams leaving and teams coming in. That's complex. And then Kennesaw State comes in 2024, another good baseball program. And the American, same thing. They've got 3 teams leaving. They got the 4 teams coming. I will leave you guys with the Big West. Santa Barbara is loaded.
They look really good, yeah. That looks like a top 15 type of club on paper.
Yeah, and then UC Irvine has literally every single at-bat back from last year.
Yeah,
plus their shortstop, Woody Haydeen, did not play last year. And so, they're old on the mounds, not as accomplished, but they're old on the mound. So I think the Big West is going to be really fun. This will be the final season of the Big West without a conference tournament, I am told. 2025 will be their tournament. Yeah. No location has been disclosed, but it will be a 5-team tournament, 5 versus 4 play in, and then it's a 4-team regional format. So
I will say this: I think this could be the next 2 years could be a really important segue for the Big West, because I think if you look at UCSB, you look at UC Irvine, Dietz has Fullerton playing better. I do think with the way realignment's kind of come into play with UCLA, USC leaving, Washington going to the Big Ten. I do think this leaves a window of opportunity for the Big West. They've been a little bit quieter over the last few years. I think if those 2 teams can have a great year, kind of get them back in the national spotlight a little bit, and then those teams go to the Big Ten, I think you can see a surge in this conference, because I think there is a market for kids in the state of California, Nevada, Arizona to actually want to stay out west. Like, I know it's like the sexy thing now to go to the SEC or go to the East Coast, but I think for a lot of these good players who, they may not want to go to Oxford, Mississippi. Like, I think it could be really interesting to see if the Big West can take advantage of some of these programs leaving and going to play, college baseball in the northern part of the country.
Yep, I'm with you. And, of course, like Irvine and UCSB, to me, they are Omaha caliber rosters. But then getting way ahead of ourselves, like, hey, is one of them going to be stuck in the Corvallis regional? Or, like, how does this play out? And, we know the Big West RPIs are going to be problematic. I mean, that's getting way ahead.
Well, UCSB is the big one I circle. And this is no disrespect for Costa Mesa and Irvine. But, like, if I'm UCSB and all these programs are starting to play in the northern part of the country, like, if I'm Andrew Checkett's, like, dude, I'm okay with that, because I'm in Santa Barbara, my administration's finally putting some money into my facilities. We've got good cachet on the national stage. I mean, it's a good academic school in a great town. That is a great overall profile. And if I'm Andrew Checketts, I'm totally fine with those programs leaving the state, because now I think they become the most attractive option in Southern California.
Yeah, I mean, what's not to like about it? They're getting turf, by the way, too, Santa Barbara, which is really cool.
Great.
Yeah, super cool. It's going to be fun. So, gentlemen, that's it. Let's wrap it right there. Happy Thanksgiving to you and yours, as they say. This was fun. Again, these are not binding comments. Nobody signed anything today. That we were pre-qualifying, Joe. We were pre-qualifying our loan. We have not locked in any rates. We're just want to kind of wet everybody's
Vol Twitter is going to pick up on Joe not picking Tennessee to win the SEC in November.
Oh gosh, take the holiday off, Twitter.
By the way, Rune, so what's the story in the toboggan today on the podcast? Is it chilly in your house?
Oh, it's always chilly. Yeah. Jenny is hot-blooded now. I am like an old man. I want to light myself on fire. So I've got my Round Rock Classic, hat from the guys at Peak Events. So
be here before we know it.
Yeah, that's right. Can't wait. So that's it. Happy holidays, everyone, and we will catch you next time on the D1 Baseball Podcast.